The Film Basement is filmed in sunny West Hartford, Connecticut, in front of a live studio audience.
Welcome to a kind of strange episode of The Filmmaker's Basement. I'm Brandon.
I'm Andrew.
And we're going to be talking about some of the movies we saw this week, in addition to playing a little game show later on. And the reason I say that is because before we started, I asked Andrew what movie he was seeing, and I had absolutely never heard of this film. And in addition to that, I saw a bizarre movie, and that movie's name is Renfield. So, Renfield, the tortured aide to his narcissistic boss, Dracula, is forced to procure his master's prey and do his every bidding. However, after centuries of servitude, he's ready to see if there's life outside of the shadow of the Prince of Darkness. This was a classic Nic Cage film. And by that I mean, this was a garbage film that was really enjoyable to watch because Nic Cage was in it. Nic Cage was really born to play roles like Dracula. Like, where you can just really ham it up and just really bring your all to this absolutely just bizarre performance. I think I gotta start with the actors. I mean, Nic Cage, of course, was phenomenal in this. Like, I could not have asked for a better role for him. Like, it was just really fun to watch him put his whole, like, everything he had into playing Dracula in this really weird and honestly kind of bad movie. But that being said, his Dracula was absolutely fantastic. I love how he balanced the goofiness that he brings to a role with this kind of like serious air that Dracula has to him. It makes for a really enjoyable character to watch on screen. One instance of that comes into my mind is later in the movie, Dracula is meeting up with essentially this mob boss. And he's essentially trying to like put the moves onto her to try to get control of her gang. So that way he can be the leader of the gang and he can kind of, do his whole world domination thing. And the second Nic Cage enters the room, the first thing he does is he gets down on one knee, kisses this woman's hand like he's from the 18th century, trying to like, what's a good way of putting it? Like trying to like put the moves onto her. And he's like, Madame, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. It's like, oh, that is exactly what I was looking for. He's like that throughout the entire movie. Like, I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed watching Nic Cage on screen the whole time. This wasn't like a Willy's Wonderland situation where it's just a stupid movie. It's just, he's just genuinely enjoyable to watch. Like, you can tell he's having a really good time with the role. I'll also say Nicholas Hoult as Renfield was really fun to watch. I loved how he played this like really nervous Igor type assistant where he is essentially trying to fulfill Dracula's every need while also realizing he's in this really horrible narcissistic relationship that he needs to get out of. Which I like how they play upon that in the movie because he always ends up like around Dracula, he always ends up being really kind of like nervous, looking kind of pathetic, and it sometimes appears in his real world life. But then you compare him to a regular person, he's like a Superman, essentially. So it's very funny how that kind of plays out to where like when he's not in Dracula's presence, he's this really like pretty decent person. He's got a really good personality. He's got superpowers, essentially. Like, cool dude. Second Dracula shows up, he's like spineless. He has no spine. He's just like, Dracula's going to kill me. I can't do this. So I enjoyed that performance. Honorary mention to Ben Schwartz as a gangbanger. I don't know if you remember him from Parks and Rec. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ralph Macchio. Dude was hilarious as a gangbanger who was also a mama's boy. Because his whole thing was that he was the son of the mob boss. So you're essentially watching him be like, yeah, I'm all tough. And then 5 seconds later, he's like, Mom! They beat me up, Mom, send help. It's another one of those where it's like you were meant to play this style of role. And he does it perfectly. So always an enjoyable watch when he's on screen. I loved it. Rest of the film is a mess. The plot is extremely predictable and kind of like all over the place. So it's basically the story of Renfield trying to cut ties with his boss, Dracula. He's like, this dude is not good to me. I don't like being in this relationship. I want out after all this time. And it's very predictable in the way it hits all of its beats. Like, you couldn't see it going into the movie, but the second you're in the theater, you're like, okay, so this is what they're going to do next, and this is what they're going to do next, and this is how it's going to kind of follow through. Which isn't as fun when you're watching it, because you're like, I want a little bit of surprise, I want to see like something pop out at me. And it kind of just felt like, what's a good way of putting it? It's like they shot a bunch of really fun scenes And they were like, we have Nicolas Cage's Dracula acting really well in all these scenes. How do we connect them? And they kind of have this shoestring plot that connects all these really cool and fun scenes together. So it's not like a movie you're going to for the plot, because it's not, again, really there. It's really there just to kind of have like fun in these scenes when they make an appearance. Like, for instance, there's this scene at a bar towards the middle where Renfield is kind of like, he's trying to find prey for Dracula. So he's about to go and like ambush a woman. But then out of nowhere, all these gangbangers enter a bar and are trying to essentially assassinate a cop. And so Renfield is like, screw it, I'm going to stand up for this person because I think this is stupid. They're putting all these people in danger. And you get an amazing action scene that plays out after this, where like Renfield's ripping people's arms off. Like the cop is shooting people in the head. Like, it is fantastic. It is absolutely phenomenal. So the movie is really good when you have moments like that. Like there's a lot of moments later in the film with Dracula that are like that. Renfield gets into positions like that. But it's like when you get to those more story-heavy moments, or like when they're actually trying to connect those scenes together, it just kind of falls apart. Also, an honorary mention to the extreme gore. This was a movie where I think this is what Cocaine Bear was trying to do with its extreme gore, that I think it failed at pretty epically. Cocaine Bear was trying to have like, haha, look at all these people getting decapitated, but they made it too real. Renfield takes that and is like, we're going to go absolutely absurd with it. Renfield's going to be ripping people's arms off. He's going to be decapitating people with a plate. Like, people are going to get split in half. And it doesn't look real. It looks real enough to be believable, but like, you can tell it's like, okay, that's CG, or that's a blood pack, or like, that's just a prop of somebody's head on the ground. It's like, okay, it's believable enough, but I can tell that's not a real thing that's happening to someone, and it doesn't look horrific. It's just fun. So overall, excellent popcorn flick. Excellent date movie flick. Like, if you just want like a really fun, if you just want to have a good time with someone, go see this movie. It's fantastic. I am really upset because nobody's watching this movie, apparently, because it is doing poorly at the box office, which is sad to me as somebody who really likes these kind of like garbage Nicolas Cage movies, because it's like, this is so much fun. Come on, give it a shot. Check it out. So I think it's totally worth a watch, just on Nicolas Cage's Dracula alone.
Well, I did not go to the theater this week. I decided to stay home and watch a movie on a new and upcoming sponsor, not a sponsor to this show. I have had an Apple TV subscription for the last year and a half. And I decided to just now finally get on there and see what's on there. And I found a movie that I've been seeing on TikTok, and it's called Tetris. And it is about an enterprising game developer who risks everything in a race to outmaneuver duplicitous insiders to negotiate a deal with the Soviet Union bureaucrats for the international licensing rights to what would eventually become one of the most recognizable and widely played games in history. Now, it's not a movie about the making of Tetris. It explains on how Tetris is made very quickly at the beginning of the movie. This is about a guy who wants to take something out of the Soviet Union in the 80s, which is the height of the USSR and in communism, and wants to take something out of Russia to spread it to everyone worldwide.
Interesting.
Which is
so it's
something
the marketing of
which is something that the USSR does not like to do in that time. They want to keep everything in country. So Hank Rogers, who is the video game developer in the movie, played by Taron Egerton, has to go to Russia for business, even though you're not allowed to go to the USSR on business unless you're invited for business. So he basically has to sneak in as a tourist and then try to get like business meetings with people. And it's more like I thought it was going to be more about video game development and stuff like that. And it's much more like a Soviet spy movie kind of feel to it, like a spy thriller. Because there's points where, the KGB's listening in on conversations with people, and there's like blackmail happening between different parties of Russia and outside Russia. And essentially what this character is trying to do is he gets into a deal with this company that owns the PC and console and arcade licensing rights for North America. And he buys the PC, console, and arcade rights for Japan. So he has those rights for Japan, and he goes to Nintendo to try to sell them on Tetris. And then it becomes an entire movie about trying to get legal documented rights for the licensing of the game, because we end up finding out that he purchased the licensing rights, but he has no proof from the USSR. Mm-hmm. And the USSR is saying that he's illegally selling their product without proper licensing rights. And then it turns out that the company that has the North American licensing rights doesn't have the rights either, because, like I said, the USSR does not want anything to be, manufactured for like profit, like high end profit, because they're a communist country. So they try to, make sure that everything is kosher. And it was an interesting movie. I read that there's some parts of the movie that were fabricated. Like there's a car chase scene near the end of the movie that obviously probably didn't happen, where they were being chased down by the KGB going to the airport. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the movie is pretty historically accurate in how Tetris became one of the best-selling video games of all time that has now sold over 500 billion copies or something like that. Mm-hmm. There's some ridiculous amount, and it's the third best-selling video game of all time now, behind Mario and Minecraft of all things. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting to see how that all like came to be, because like you expect it to be like these big corporations like Nintendo that gets in on the ground floor, but it wasn't. It was this random guy who owns this software company who had to strike a deal with Nintendo and then had to go to Russia and basically kind of fight for his life while in Russia, because he has no contacts in Russia and no contact with the outside world out of Russia, because they don't have like long distance phones in the Soviet Union. And it was just interesting. He was like stranded in Russia for a time, and then finally went home, and then ended up having to go back. It also has the creator of Tetris is in the movie predominantly as well. Alexei Pajitnov. And he plays a pretty important role in getting Tetris to the West, because he ends up defecting from the Soviet Union near the end of the movie, and in real life, because of the threats by the KGB. And so this is actually all happening around the time of the fall of Nikol Gorbachev, and the fall of pretty much the end of the Cold War, because this was I think it was like mid 80s, something like that. It was like and it was also right around when Game Boy was launching, because that was like one of the big things that was a surprise to the actors or the characters and in real life, was that Nintendo was creating this handheld device that features 8-bit graphics and 10 hours of gameplay on 4 AA batteries. And this entrepreneur, this businessman, had this brilliant idea of getting handheld rights for Tetris for Nintendo, so that they could package Tetris with Game Boy instead of Mario, because his whole spiel and his whole stick on that was, why sell the Game Boy to kids when package it with Mario when you can package it with Tetris and sell it to everyone, because everyone's going to be wanting to play Tetris. And that's ended up what happened in real life. The Game Boy was packaged with Tetris and sold out across numerous countries in America and Japan and everywhere. And that's essentially, that was I think Tetris might have been the start of the video game boom, because if you know anything about video games in the 80s, is it was a failing business. Video games were not popular. They were not profitable. And then Nintendo came along and made this cartridge console that took off. And then they made Game Boy, and then Tetris came along. And Tetris basically, you watch in the movie, they show you the popularity and sales of Tetris. And Tetris was the highest selling game of all time, other than in 2009 or it was after 2009, but when Minecraft became widely popular. So it was a good movie. If you have Apple TV, which most people who have, and I just found this out, hashtag ad, but if you have T-Mobile, and you have a specific plan through T-Mobile, you have Apple TV for free. So you can actually watch all of Apple TV's wonderful programming, like Tetris, for free. So I would recommend it, just because if you want to know the history behind some of the details of the video game industry, like I did, it was a good watch. It was very interesting. It was better than I was expecting it to be, because I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, and as informative as it was either. So
yeah, it's interesting. It seems like a very interesting mix between like a documentary and like what are those like a dramatic retelling, essentially, of the events behind this. And it's an interesting topic too, because it's surprising nobody really ever touches on this on Tetris as like a, what's it called, like a cornerstone for anything, because it's, like you said, it's a very influential game. So it's really cool seeing that there's a movie actually about this, the history of it.
It was originally made in like Russia, like I'd been saying, and Russia was not on the forefront of technology in the USSR in the 80s. They had these old school computers that were black screens with green text. And so this computer programmer made this game with these little, what do they call them? Tetranomicons or whatever they're called. And, they're little 4-block little pieces that, he originally they were parentheses. That's how they were made in the programming. They were like 2 pairs of parentheses put together 4 times in many different ways. And then, the blocks would fall and you would create a line, the line would disappear. And it actually took over Russia. Like, people in Russia were playing this game rather than doing their work. And it was actually banned for a little while in Russia. It was crazy to watch and to see how it unfolded. So
yeah, it sounds really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think on that, I think we'll move on to everyone's favorite game show, Pilot Wings. So, for this episode, I'm going to give Andrew 3 reviews from a movie that he has seen. And these are reviews from audience members specifically. It's going to be up to Andrew to guess what movie this is based off of a movie that he has seen. And I know for sure you've seen it because we talked about it. We talked about it, I guess not that recently, but somewhat recently enough, within the last 6 months. So, first review. I think the actors did a decent job, but the plot was sickening and disappointing. Why would you make a psychotic movie at the time in which our society is dealing with so much mental problems and psychos killing innocent people? I am pretty disappointed at everyone involved for adding it to our societal problems rather than trying to bring some joy into people's lives. And that was brought to us by our faithful reviewer, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Number 2. It was a good movie, but not quite a whodunit. More of a who did what, being in wrong place, revenge, and villain becomes likable in a weird way. Storytelling keeps you interested. Movie has a lot of twists and turns, and that was brought to us by Tammy. And then our final review. I was bored in the middle. I understood the concept, but it lacked cohesion. It felt scattered, with bits of backstory on each character, but not enough to make them real. And the suicide was silly. I could never figure out why. I wouldn't recommend the movie. And that was brought to us by Teresa. Thanks, Teresa. So, Andrew, based off of those reviews, which movie do you think this is?
I had an idea at first, but I'm not I'm not so sure about it now. Mm-hmm. So the first one where they're saying the plot was sickening, and why would you make a psychotic movie at the time when our society is dealing with so much mental problems? It's obviously about someone struggling with mental illness, just because of that. And then the last one where they say the suicide was silly. It made me think of something specific. Mm-hmm. But now I'm not sure, because some of the way that those 3 reviews were describing this movie doesn't make me feel like it's this movie anymore.
Interesting.
Just because of the way that they talk about the plot and the backstory.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any initial guesses then?
Yeah, I'm really in seeing. See, I actually think that it's a movie with a similar actress in it. Now I'm thinking of 2 movies. Now I'm thinking of 2 different movies.
Okay.
Because now I'm thinking that it's something else, and both movies actually have the same lead actress. My initial thought was Last Night in Soho.
Okay.
Because the suicide at the end, and how you think that she's going through some mental illness when actually it's much more paranormal. My second thought is The Menu, because it's that second line where it's the villain becomes likable in a weird way, and the storytelling keeps you interested, lots of twists and turns. And the suicide in that movie was pretty silly with all the. I don't know if you watched that movie yet.
I haven't,
but like at the end, like they pretty much, the chef ends up killing everybody in the restaurant and like their entire staff and himself. And he makes pretty much all the patrons into like s'mores. Yeah,
that is weird.
It's a good watch. I like that movie. I'm not gonna take that 4th clue just because usually that 4th clue is like an immediate, like, all right, well, that's obviously what this movie is. So I'm gonna take a stab at it, and I'm gonna go with The Menu.
Okay, Andrew. You actually nailed it. I did not even think of Last Night in Soho. That is very interesting because that does exactly line up with that movie.
It does. And so I was thinking about that, and then but it's that line where it said the villain becomes likable in a weird way.
Yeah.
Where in that movie, in Last Night in Soho, you don't really know who the villain is until the very end, so you don't really get that experience with them. So I was like, well, I don't know if it's Last Night in Soho anymore.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about Anya Taylor-Joy because I love Anya Taylor-Joy because she's very attractive. And then I was like, well, Anya Taylor-Joy was also in a movie called The Menu where there was a suicide at the end, like a mass suicide. And that is a pretty crazy movie. Not so much dealing with like mental illness like directly, but the head chef played by Ralph Fiennes is pretty much going insane because of the problems with his previous patrons that he's had, and he is going through some sort of like mental with like something's going on in his brain that he's just going crazy. And it was true, like the villain becomes likable in a weird way, like that I liked the villain in that movie just because he was a completely understandable in his actions. I mean, as crazy as they were, and just like, oh, well, all of his reasonings, I mean, except for one, were pretty like, okay, like I could see that. Like if you go pretty crazy about stuff like that. But no, it was good. Does that fourth?
I think the fourth would definitely have given it away.
Give it away?
It references the service industry, art, food, culture, and all that.
Okay.
So I think you would have. I think you would have
definitely
definitely gotten it with that.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting. Again, I never would have thought of Last Night in Soho, but I'm going to keep that in mind in the future because that is a very interesting thought process. But yeah, thanks for playing that game this week. And before we close things out, why don't we talk about some upcoming releases? And I have one that it's already technically come out, and that is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I think that released last week, so I think that'll be my next bet now that I no longer have Renfield to look forward to. Because the trailer seems pretty funny. I'm still disappointed we're nowhere near the Barbie movie yet. Because I really want to see that so bad.
I just it's so weird that like all the characters in that movie are called Barbie.
Yeah.
And all the male characters are called Ken.
I actually
that's going to be
that's so
really
funny.
confusing. Oh, there's a trailer where Margot Robbie's character is like saying hi to all the other female characters, and it's just hi Barbie, oh hi Barbie, hi Barbie, hi Barbie.
I love that.
This is like, so all the females are Barbie and all the male characters are Ken. And apparently there's like this rivalry between Ryan Gosling and character and Simu Liu's character, which are both versions of Ken. So,
oh man, I still love that one. I think it's that one clip where it's Ken and Barbie talking. Ken's like, "So, do you mind if I stay the night?" And Barbie's like, "Yeah, sure." And Ken's like, "Cool." And Barbie's like, "So, what are we gonna do during the night?" And he's like, "I have no idea."
Yeah,
it's like everything I've seen about this movie. Every description is just like, this is gonna be such a fucking good watch.
And when does it even come out? Is it? It's way
like
down
July,
this list,
right? It's a while. Which is again unfortunate because I would really want to see that and Oppenheimer at the same time. But what are you gonna do? You gotta wait a little while for perfection. But in the meantime, at least for me, I'm having a little bit of trouble finding anything else I'm really interested in seeing. I don't know about you.
New Marvel movie came out this weekend, so I'll be seeing that.
What movie?
Guardians 3.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. Jimmy was just talking about that.
Yeah. So Guardians 3 just came out, so I'll be seeing that. I want to know what this is. I like Sean Bean. I like Famke Jensen.
You're talking about Knights of the Zodiac?
Knights of the Zodiac.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. I hadn't even heard of this.
When a goddess of war reincarnates in the body of a young girl street orphan, Saia discovers that he is destined to protect her and save the world, but only if he can face his own past and become the Knight of the Zodiac. I have no idea.
No, that's weird because I've never seen that. Oh wait, that makes sense.
It's produced by Toei Animation.
That explains why we have no idea what's happening here.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it seems like they have a lot of American actors in it.
It's live action, isn't it? Yeah, it's live action.
It's live action. I mean, I wouldn't surprise me if they were doing something live action. It just surprised me more so they have so many, you know.
Doesn't have a good initial score.
I mean, that's whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, other than that, I'm kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to see. Oh, there's there's the Charlie Day movie that's coming out, Fool's Paradise. I don't know if you've seen trailers for that.
Mm-mm.
So this is essentially some guy who was in like a mental institution who basically his thing is that he doesn't speak for any reason. Like,
I have seen.
Yeah, and then they throw him out into the real world and becomes like a silent movie star.
Yeah.
That seems really funny. So that I might also see because that seems like such a good premise.
It's got a good cast in it too.
I mean, hey, it's Charlie Day. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that.
Kate Beckinsale, Jason Sudeikis, Adrian Brody, Ray Liotta, Jason Bateman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's going to be good. So I think that's definitely something to look forward to. But I think unless you have anything else you're interested in.
No, other than that, I mean, I don't get to anything, and I don't see anything that really pops at me until late May.
Yeah.
So
a little bit of a doldrum for a minute, but hopefully things will pick up, or maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Who knows?
They're gonna pick up with the amount of like new trailers that I've seen with like summer blockbusters. There's a lot of summer blockbusters this year. There's the new Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Is a new Transformers movie.
Yeah.
There's a new Pixar movie.
Which is interesting because I don't feel like we've had a lot of summer blockbusters these last few years.
No, we haven't. No. And this year, Flash is this year. Blue Beetle. So DC's kicking off. There's a new Indiana Jones. Insidious, if you're into the horror movies. Yeah. Mission Impossible. Barbie. Little Mermaid.
Do you know apparently they're not going to do the Barbie girl song in the Barbie movie?
I'm not surprised.
It's so unfortunate though. It would have been so good.
I mean, that and those movies I just listed off, that's all before August.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's all before August, except for Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle's after. But like after August, there's 2 shark movies coming out after August. There's the Meg 2 and a movie called Mako.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, Blue Beetle in August. Yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton of movies coming out this year. Blockbusters, summer blockbusters, which, like you said, we have not had in the last few years, I think, since COVID.
Yeah, and that's probably why we haven't had it. I mean, last year was the first time, COVID numbers were actually significantly down, so they probably could get these big budget films made.
Oh, there's a Saw movie coming out this year. Time to rewatch Saw.
That'll be a you watch because I definitely could not handle that.
Oh, and Dune. That's you're right up your alley.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started. The new trailer dropped for Dune 2.
I may not see that.
Really?
Yeah, the first one just didn't do it for me, and we talked about that when we both saw it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's very fair because again, I grew up with those books. Like those were my that was my shit in high school. So I saw the second trailer. I could not be more excited for where that franchise is going. But I think that's a good place to end it on then.
Oh my
Andrew,
God.
Do you have anything you want to plug before we close out?
If you're going to be in San Diego, May 19th?
Yeah,
the weekend of May 19th. Go and check out the GI Film Festival and go see all of the wonderful short films that are going to be there, including our own from Name Pending Productions, Police 3, which Jimmy Lucars will be there to promote and to answer all of your questions.
Yes, and he will want to answer all your questions, so come prepared. But yeah, that being said, I don't have anything I want to plug, so I think we could close things out here. Thank you all for watching The Filmmaker's Basement. I'm Brandon.
I'm Andrew.
And we will see you guys next time.